Need Steph's nudge this week. That was good. And the topic of today is earned value. So I guess whether you hang on to this webinar or not depends on how familiar you are with it. But I'm going to try and give some sort of education to the concept of earned value and why it's of use, as well as integrate that with how we are implementing it at UniPhi through the software. The earned value capability has been in the product for a little while from a project perspective, but there's certain elements to that were challenging for people to actually get good level of detail out of that process. So UniPhi 17 has, through its N levels or unlimited level work breakdown structure in a contract, the ability to actually track earned value from a contract deliverable perspective, and we're mainly targeting sort of design or engineering based deliverables in that context. So this presentation is going to start off just by looking at earned value as a concept, and then look at the way that UniPhi implements that now, and then the way that, so that'll still exist and it's still valid, and then there'll be a drilled down version where relevant for others through the new contracts module that we've rewritten. Okay, so I'm going to go through the components of earned value in a moment, but before I do, I just want to switch to sort of the end and give a bit of a taster of where we're going. Where do I want to go? I want to go there. Okay. So we're going to be looking at a little portfolio, a small program of activities that's happening on a roads program here. We've got the zone of the program and the child projects. And we're going to basically look at how earned value is being tracked against that portfolio. Out of the box at the moment, there are a few ways to then get metrics. So this is like a taster of the end, looping back at the end of the webinar. We'll come to these reports. You can build Power BI dashboards that analyze earned value. And so this is a deck that we did for a project that's going on in the UK, hence it's pounds. The data's not that, and obviously that's all been changed, but the Power BI shell that we built was for them. And so we just pointed it at our training data, at our presentation database, which is what you're looking at, which means the data's a little bit funky, but it gives you an idea. So you've got these acronyms here that I'm going to explain, like CPI and SPI and BCWS and EV throughout the presentation. But essentially the idea is this is from a portfolio perspective. For those who know what those acronyms mean, you can see the key for those who aren't that familiar with earned value is that it's a trending metric. So you need to be able to capture pieces of information over time and track how you're performing over time. So dates are important. That's the biggest key to understand in this bit, as opposed to a whole of project budget and a whole of project forecast. We need to know dates of when things are happening. So schedule and price, schedule and budget. And so on this particular graph here, this is looking at all the projects in the presentation database, and the green line is trending how we thought we were going to spend money and how we thought we were going to progress projects. That's our plan. And then the red line is what we've actually spent, so we haven't spent much at all. And then the black is what we earned for that spending. So how much of this particular green line did we actually earn when we spent the red line? And so sometimes we were doing a bit better than, we're earning more than what we spent. And then slowly over time, we've started to drag underneath what we spent. And obviously we're a long way behind schedule, which is that big gap. So that's the sort of stuff you can start to get out of earned value. Warnings, early warnings around how you're performing, as opposed to what you thought you were going to do when you created your crystal ball gazed Gantt chart, scheduled it out and got some sort of profile. In UniPhi, obviously portfolio program and project management, you can then drill that in to programs. So this is our little zone 1 program that we were showing a minute ago through the interface. Again, the stats across the top. Again, as you'll see, there's a green dotted line here for 1. For the schedule performance index and cost performance index, that's what the acronyms mean, SPI and CPI. If you're performing above 1, then you're doing well. If you're performing below 1, you're not doing well. So that target line is there in the graph, and you can see on this particular program, we're not doing too well. And that's represented in the fact that we spent a lot of money, much more than we thought we were going to spend against our planned profile there, which is the green. And then the earned value for that spending is really poor as well. We haven't been progressing as fast as we should for the money that we're spending. Hopefully that starts to give you a flavor of what we're going to get out of this, but also starts the journey on understanding all of the silly acronyms and what they might mean. That's where I'm going to start now. So once you've got the key sort of 3 components to earn value, then the rest is pretty trivial. The first component is a budget. And so you need a whole of project budget to be able to determine what percentage of that budget you're earning as you progress over time. But that budget at this point in time is just a whole of project. It doesn't have any time element to it. Then you need to work out how you expect to spend that budget. And you can do that through, scheduling of tasks, start and end dates and dependencies and what have you. We're going to show you elements of how to do this in UniPhi as well. So I'm just going to stop there and jump into the system and do those 2 things. Actually, I will finish this slide first, and then I'll do that in the next slide. So yeah, that's the second metric, and it's called budgeted cost of work scheduled, or BCWS, and it's basically the month-by-month profile of how you think you will spend on this project. So you might have a $20 million commercial building you're building. You might have a $500,000 intersection of a road. It doesn't really matter. How is that $500,000 going to get spent over time? How is that $20 million going to get spent over time? That's what we need. We need that timeline. Then as we start to do the project, what we will do is assess how much of that progress we've earned. What percent complete we are, essentially. And we take that percent complete and we multiply it by the total budget to get a representation of what we earn. Now, the trick there is a valid percent, trying to get project managers to assess, quantity surveyors potentially to assess percent complete. What's the basis for doing that? And so we're going to show you some methods in UniPhi that we use. And this is the crucial bit, because invalid percent complete basically throws this whole thing. Useless, absolutely useless. The other challenge is getting the next one, which is actual spend against that profile. So because of disparate systems, you might have a P6 schedule that's got all the resource loading and all the planning, and that gives you a nice budgeted cost of work scheduled. How do you determine the percent complete in that tool? Not that easy. So you need to determine other methods for doing that. And then you've also got all of the spend that's happening in the accounting system or in timesheets and other financial products, and that doesn't necessarily integrate neatly into that schedule. So this is what UniPhi's got. This is the capability that we're bringing to the table, is bringing all of those elements together. And when you see the UniPhi 17 element of that, we're bringing it right together at the deliverable stage. So one of the key challenges we've had feedback from our user base is that when they're doing, say, a design phase deliverable, you have a drawing that you need to deliver, and it needs to go through various stage gates. It's hard to track that from the 3 components we just mentioned, the expected spend of that particular deliverable, the actual spend of that particular deliverable, and how much you earn when you actually spend time working on that particular deliverable, and being able to validate all of that and actually have it as a robust measure that tells you something. And so if we get all of that, what we can do is we can combine those metrics to actually use a formula to generate a new estimate complete and compare that to what we're using through other methods, which could be bottom-up remaining hours forecasted, slippage in a schedule, and just compare those changes to what our algorithm is saying as an estimate of completion. So they're the components of earned value. Now what I'm going to do is take you through each of them. And of course, the challenge in UniPhi is that there's always more than one way to do something, because users have different needs, and hence they need to configure their system to do it the way they want to do it. And so, believe it or not, you have 7 options to generate a budget in UniPhi that you might use for earned value purposes. And so we have a resource planning module, and there's actually an 8th one missing from this, which is the UniPhi 17 methodology, which is your revenue contract. Oh, there it is, 5. I meant to highlight that orange. You'll see an orange highlighter on the other PowerPoint slides. That's the 17 bit. So revenue contract here, number 5, that's the new bit. 1 through to 7, excluding 5, you can do in UniPhi 16. UniPhi 17 brought in the revenue contract for doing a budget. So you can go into resource planning, estimate out some hours over time, And then the sum of those hours multiplied by the rates for the people that you've allocated that to determines the budget. You've also got the cost module that enables you to estimate a budget, and then you can phase that out over time. The new revenue contract, and often what you'll need to do is combine 1 with 3, so your effort with your purchasing, or if you're doing it on a charge rate basis because you're reporting earned value from the client's perspective, the person actually paying the money, they'll be paying the charge rate, and so you'll be doing that charge rate plus the purchases that you're doing for that project. So depending on your perspective, you're going to need to tweak the reports or adjust the methodology in UniPhi for calculating earned value. So if we demonstrated that in the interface, we'd come in here, and for this particular project list, we could go, and what I'm planning on doing is, if I go back to the PowerPoint, you'll see in dashboard 3, these are project specific earned value charts, right? And you can see that we have 3 project specific dashboards here. These 2, you'll see the filter over on the right hand side. It says road design, hasn't got any data, right? So let's see if we can get it some. So there's road design in UniPhi. So I mentioned that you can put in an internal cost budget, which is something you might do if there's a lot of purchasing that you need to do. It's not a heavily labor component earned value assessment. So you would have an internal cost coding system that matches your accounting system, so the 2 can talk to one another, and then you can drill in on those particular codes, whatever they might be, and build up a budget for that. So let's just say buy stuff, and I put in $50,000, and that's a whole of project budget. So the problem is that's only my budget at completion. What I need to know is the profile of that particular 50,000. How are we going to spend it? And in UniPhi, there's 2 methodologies you can use in the cost module. You can auto phase it based on some algorithms, or you can go into manual phasing. And I'm just going to go into manual phasing for the moment, and I'll just go back in time a little bit, and we'll go. There's also a percent complete here that you can put in, an expected milestone, if you like, methodology. But this is really should be on an earned profile. So this is when you think the money should be spent and therefore accrued, not necessarily when it's going to come out of your bank account. Otherwise, the earned value is not very good. And then we just finished the job. It'll tell you the difference between what your whole of project budget is and how much you've phased. And they can be different, and that's the key that you need to work out. Is that valid to be different? Usually not. Therefore, you need to make sure that that's balancing. Now, if you've got auto phasing turned on, then that'll do that for you automatically. I've just done it manual for this purpose. The second part that we talked about, so this will be combining 2, is the resources, and in the resource planning. So the limitation here, and the reason we've got the new contracts module, is you basically needed to know how much time people were spending on the project without any task-based detail underneath that. Having said that, some people will do earn value from the project drop-down having tasks here. So a project and a series of tasks is the other way to do that. Again, in here, there's some methodologies. You can do percent complete, percent allocation. And I'll show you also a way you can bulk add this in another project in a moment using the scheduling from a life cycle phase. And so in the meantime, I'll just say, okay, we went back a bit in time. We'll start back in April, and Jane's 10% on this job over that period of time, and Joe Bloggs is 25. And that's that done. You can see that I'm viewing budget here, so I'm just baselining everything. There's obviously actual timesheet hours will come in for comparison, and you can reforecast, which is the other way to get an estimate of completion, which we can then compare our own value to later on. I mentioned that if you go to, I'll show you another project one prepared earlier. I think it's this one here. You see these color-coded lines. That's basically coming from the time module where you've scheduled out stage gates. And then what you can do is you can actually bulk add to these people percent allocations on those dates. So if I click the little bulk add, I can say, okay, these people are going to be on detailed design, and they're going to be 25% allocated and click apply. And it'll use their standard hours. So Joe Bloggs is only a part-time worker, 4 hours, so it'll do less for him. You can see 109 versus 218. Allocate 25% of their standard hours across that time frame, which is synchronized to a detailed design schedule. So if that schedule changes, these phases will automatically update. I click submit, and that gets the profile now of the hours for those people across that timeline. And you can do it, bulk add and change the life cycle phase to do the different dates for that. So what that's given us is our first 2 key metrics. We now have a total budget for the project based on hours and costs, and we have a phased timeline of that on how we expect to earn it based on these percent completes that are going along here with the dates going up the top. So that's our blue line in our schedule, which is the first thing that we need to do. If we come back to our PowerPoint slide now and we go to the next one. So that's what I've just done there. I'm going to come back to the UniPhi 17 later, but we've basically resource planned out our hours, and we've time phased our budget, and we've combined them in the reports. When we run the reports later, it'll be combining, and we can pick within the report whether we want to use cost or charge rate, and I'll show you that in a moment. So we've done that one too, that's good. So now let's assume that the project actually has started to have stuff happen to it. You've actually commenced to work on it. So time is elapsing. And what we need to do now is actually work out what the percent complete is. Now, what UniPhi enables you to do in the 16 version for this is this schedule a milestone, while not being under the time module in 16, it is in 17 obviously, is still available under the summary. If I go to my road design now, you'll see there's no schedule here. If I go to schedule, I can schedule out those phases. That doesn't do much to earn value, but that's handy for doing that resource planning that I was showing you before. And that can come from a Primavera MS project schedule to synchronize on those. Same with your milestones. But the other thing you can do with milestones is you can actually configure standard stage gates. And so if your project is designed for a suite of projects, or for your, if it's a standalone project, you'll probably just go bespoke and you would just type in the various milestones, or you would synchronize them from a schedule somewhere. Otherwise, what you can do is create a template if you're running a suite of projects that are similar. And this is just a demo of that. And if I hit save, it'll bring in 3. But your list can be as long as it needs to be, and it'll create a standard. And along with that, you can actually create a standard earned value profile, which we haven't done in this case. But what that essentially means is that when the business case is approved, then what we're saying is you will earn 5% of the total project budget. You would have progressed the project by 5%. Then when the board approves the budget, you might get another 25%. And this needs to add up to 100 eventually. Now, I don't have enough milestones in here for it to be validly 100, but let's actually make that 10% and then 25%. So we need some more milestones to actually get that up to 100, but that'll do for now. Then what happens? So that's basically what you're allowed to earn when you complete these tasks. And you can look for evidence in UniPhi through the documents module that there is a business case, that there's a board approval for the budget, in the cost module that you have an approved budget, that the tender has that there's a contract that is post-award for the tendering complete. So there's lots of ways of validating the information in UniPhi as it comes through, which is crucial. And so what happens is when I've actually got my business case approved, I can then claim 100% of that 5%. And so if I hit 100% there and I hit save, what that actually does is it timestamps the date that I did as being the actual date. Now, you may not update the system every single day to get that to be accurate. So what you need to do is click the little magnifying glass and just backdate that so that it's accurate to when that was actually awarded. So I'm going to say March, because we did have some resource planning in March. And that date there doesn't really mean anything. It's the status date that, I mean, it doesn't mean anything for earned value. It means any things for when you look at time, Gantt charts and the like. But the key for earned value is 8th of March. And so what that will mean is we'll earn 5% of the total budget for that project on the 8th of March. And if I was to then go back up again and say we're 50% through the board approval, now again, you'd need to look for evidence of that. When I hit save again, it'll put today's date, which in the magnifying glass view, it'll be in there as today's date. So I need to click on that again. And it didn't put an actual because it was only 50% complete. but I can then backdate that to May, and now we'll earn 50% of the 10% of the total project budget. So now we've got 2 earned value dates in there, which is great. And that basically means that I've ticked off this particular slide now. We're good to go. And then, of course, I need, well, how much did it actually cost me in time and money to get the business case done and the board papers approved? One of the most favourite experiences in life was in the 90s, working with British Airways on some seatback video business cases where we spent £20 million. So business cases can cost a lot of money, and that was a lot of fun. Business case didn't get approved, so we wrote that money off, but it was still a lot of fun spending it. So earned value would tell you whether that £20 million was progressing you anywhere through the milestones that you're claiming against. And I also need the spend, how much we've actually spent, which is that 20 million. So how does that come about? It comes about through timesheet hours multiplied by the cost rate or charge rate. In UniPhi 17, you also can do contract deliverable timesheet hours times cost rate and charge rate. So that's a more granular look at the earned value. And you may have integration with an accounting system that's pulling actuals, or you may progress claim against cost contracts, where a quantity surveyor will do 10% complete against a contract. That gets us our actuals as assessed for that particular contract. Sum it across all of the projects, you get a total cost for that month and subsequent months. And then you can combine various ones of those to get a total cost for the project. So, if I just quickly go into the timesheet system now and add to someone who's actually on the project. So that's Jane. Whoops, hang on, I've got a timesheet as Jane. And add my road design project. Now, Jane has submitted timesheets very well up to May, so she's only like a month behind. So we can't go back in April, but we'll just put some hours in on a Saturday because she's very diligent. She did incredible 40 hours on the day. Whoops, to the wrong project. And submit that. I'll just jump forward a week, chuck in another. And you can see that Jane's timesheeting to standard tasks, not to contract deliverables, which will come in a moment. So now I've got all of the ingredients in theory to basically have the road design project have some value. So in earned value here, it didn't have anything. So what I'm going to do is refresh that. That'll take a little while. And see if we come in with any data. That's a scary drum roll. But equally, in UniPhi 16 under profitability, there's an earned value report. And it displays all the same statistics as what were in the other one. You can see this one's looking at drainage and flooding. But if I click the drop down, road design will be there. You'll see also some key things here. You need a status date, because that's where it works out how to report actuals up to and where earned value should come up to. We'll leave it at 31st of May. You need a date range for what it's looking at. And so we're going to go out into the future because the schedule goes beyond the actuals. And then you can select, as I mentioned, which rate are you using for your budgeting? Is it cost rate or charge rate? And then we hit view and drum roll, see if we actually created anything. Phew. So this represents the resource plan, the budgeted costs. That's the resource plan and the phased actuals from the internal cost chart of accounts. This is the timesheets. Remember, we did 2 weeks in May, and that's the cumulative. So 2 weeks, it's got timesheet actuals, and then the cumulative, just flat lines. The cumulative budget going along there. And then remember, we had a couple of milestones, so they've come in 9th of May there. We've earned some value on that particular budget. If we go to the next page, you'll see a graphical representation of that. So a flatlined budget plan initially, actual costs representing the timesheet entries there, cumulative actual coming along, and the monthly linear budget cost. Then we look at this SPI and CPI, and you can see we're not performing well. We're well below 1 on both targets. And so instantly we can see that that particular project hasn't done any good. This is still refreshing, shouldn't take much longer. Let's see if this dashboard brings in the similar sorts of data. While that's going, I'll get to the next slide. So what we're now at is the ability to analyze that information, which we just did. Schedule Performance Index looks at, so there's the acronyms there. Schedule Performance Index looks at a value around 1. So earned value, whatever it is, let's say it's $1,000. Let's say you should have spent 800, then you're about 1.2. So you're doing well. You're actually ahead of schedule. These are refreshing. And yeah, we've got a similarly dire profile coming in for road design. So all's good there. That was good. Going back to my slide now. Cost performance looks at it from an actual cost perspective. So earned value is still the numerator, actual cost is the denominator. Again, an index around 1 is good, or greater than 1 means you basically, for every dollar that you're actually spending, you're progressing the project quicker than you originally thought. You're getting more performance out of it than your original plan. If your CPI is less than 1, then you're having to spend more money to progress that percent complete to actually earn value on the job. And so they can be interesting things, and you can combine those indexes in formulas to generate estimates at completion and, have discussions with players. I mean, the key here is you're 15% into a job as far as time goes and schedule, but you've only earned 5. You really need to start working, and maybe you've spent, close to 15%. You need to start working out why, and that the earlier that earned value can tell you that, the quicker you can have those discussions with the team, with the client. There may be scope issues, there may be over servicing, there may be a whole bunch of issues that maybe you've logged in UniPhi against that, but these indexes will stick out like sore thumbs under 1 and above 1 to help you as a project manager, program manager, determine what you should be focusing on and what conversations you should be having. And so that's how earned value works currently in the system. And as I said, on a program where it has been used, the challenge there was they had to upload from a spreadsheet the resource profile. So they would break down the project into tasks in a spreadsheet, which was heartbreaking, but valid. That's what they needed to do to get the granularity they needed. And people's names against those tasks and hours and efforts, and profile that out, and then copy paste that as the person's profile in the resource planning. As you saw, I had people's profile in the resource planning screen. So what we've aimed to do in UniPhi 17 is to eliminate that need for the spreadsheet detailed planning work and give people tools to do it in UniPhi. And the way we've done that is leveraged off our contracts rewrite, where you can have N-level WBS and allocate people to those. And so before I jump into that, I'll just pause a little bit there if there are any questions around the current methodology and the outcomes that you've seen in the reports from that. Please feel free to fire away. I saw a couple drop off, so understandable. Might not be everyone's cup of tea. Okay. So for this next one, we need a different set of data. So I'm just going to remove this filter and go into a different sector. And so this is basically looking at the orange elements of the PowerPoint that you will see when you replay this. This is the contract deliverables. So this won't actually give you a project-based earned value, but it will give you your contract. So it depends on what your contract is as part of the project, and a lot of client-related consulting, the project is your contract. And equally on a lot of QS work, when they do main contract, the budget is the contract. So that's where this idea comes from. So instead of using the costs module to develop the budget is actually done through the contracts module. So if I just click in on this particular project here, go to the contracts module and scroll down and click in on this particular contract, what you will see is a list of tasks and people assigned to them in an end level sense. So we had detailed design as a phase before against a particular project, and we could schedule that out. But now you can actually break down that detailed design into its components. You can see board, tunnel, segment, associated portals, assign people to those, and those people can then have hours estimated, and dollars. And then that will flow through into the timesheets for David Bowie, and he'll be timesheeting against those particular tasks. So that gives us our actuals. And then what we can also do with these hours that we've built up for this job, remembering that we can present a lump sum, contract to the client, but this is the build up of how we got to that lump sum, is if we go to the schedule in this particular screen, there's two views here now. So one is cash flow. So that's, probably even a different user using that milestone payments, what percent complete. You can actually do it at the contract level if you wanted to, or you could do it at these higher levels and just basically put into the system here, percentages complete using the percent methodology to say we're going to claim 100% there. That's only good for cash flow, which is important because you need to know when money's coming in the door. But then what you can do is switch it to effort, and you'll see that the unit changes to hours. Percent is still there as well, and you can see that you can schedule up the deliverables per person and use phasing methodologies for that to be phased out over time. And this is going to expand in functionality actually over time, but that basically gives us a baseline. And you can see once you're happy with that, you click baseline, and that sets the budgeted cost of work scheduled. So the total contract is the budget at completion, the total contract value. The budgeted cost of work scheduled is the phasing of those hours over time multiplied by their cost or charge rate, depending on which way you want to track it. And then timesheets come in against board tunnel and associated portals so that we'll get actuals. Then the crucial bit again becomes, how do we assess what percentage complete we've been able to achieve for those actual hours that we've spent? And that's where the earned value comes in. And so when we go to the earned value subnav, you'll see down here in the same structure, you get new fields. And what you're able to do is similar to that milestone list that I added earlier in the presentation at the project level, where I got business case and board approval and tender completion. You can create stage gate groups, multiple groups which have different lists of milestones. And so if I click this, there's only one in this system at the moment called a strategic list. And this is, derived from intellect we got from another program that had this kind of concept, but they were doing it at the project level. Now they can do it at the contract deliverable level. And then they'll have the stages that particular deliverable will go in. So say it's a drawing and you need to issue it for review. That might earn you 10% of that particular deliverable. So you see there's a percent complete here. Then when it's issued for approval, you might jump to 50. Then when it's with the project engineer, it might get another 20%, then another 20% at interdisciplinary review, and then another 10% at approved. The key is being able to get the right percent completes for these to get good earned value statistics. And then the ability to update them as often as you like in terms of the percent complete, because the same function will happen here. If I go into disciplinary review now and hit save, if there's a percent allocated to that, which you see there was, it's now jumped to 90% complete, which I can override and try and justify. It also, again, puts today's date as the date achieved, which again, I can go into this particular view and backdate that if I think that's necessary to get the right timeline for earned value. You can see you can write comments against why you did that, and that can bubble up into reports for debate and discussion. And hence, now that I've earned even more, my CPI and SPI on this project is off the charts. We haven't spent a lot of money on it. We didn't expect to spend a lot of money on it, so we've spent $900 worth of timesheet hours. We expected to spend 900. We've actually earned 3,060, so we're performing, going great guns. And so, yeah, you can see your own value profile here. You can see the earned coming in, and you can see the actual costs and the contract value. We plan to change this a little bit. This is still a beta. Well, not even, it's an alpha release. We'll have another column in here for the budgeted cost of work scheduled. So this is like the budget at completion. We need the budgeted cost of work scheduled in there, and then you can visualize it from a numbers perspective in the same way that you can visualize it from the graph. And so this is a more detailed, focused deliverable by deliverable methodology for earned value, as opposed to the project level that we did in the first part. But the same concepts, the same acronyms, the same performance indicators to give you a sense of how you're performing. If you actually drill in on the particular deliverable through the comments one, you'll get the statistics in there as well eventually. So that earned value stats will be coming into this screen as well. Just doesn't exist yet. Haven't knocked that out. But it definitely will be there in 3 weeks' time, and it'll be there to go live with the UniPhi 17 release on the 1st of July. And so I can't believe I got through that in 37 minutes. Maybe I went a bit quick, but that's how earned value is being managed in UniPhi. Hopefully some of you on the call will be interested in that deliverable level, because we know the problem exists. We've seen it in spreadsheets. We've seen it on programs that we've been supporting. And that's why we then invested the various time and effort in this particular release to get that value and that data correct. Any questions? I'll stop the recording there.